Listen. This sound is the first evidence of the Big Bang. And this is a story of two radio astronomers who discovered proof of the beginning of everything. This is the horn reflector antenna at Bell Laboratories. Robert, can you tell us what this thing does?
It receives radio waves coming from the direction it's pointed to and funnels them into a receiver.
That's Robert Wilson, radio astronomer. In the early 60s, he and his colleague Arno Penzias were tasked with measuring the brightness of the sky using the horn reflector antenna. But no matter where they pointed it, the antenna read a much larger signal than the pair expected.
Our immediate reaction was that there must be something wrong with our system.
They thought it might be interference from the horn itself, or New York City, or even some pigeons living in the horn.
We thought about a collection of ordinary sources that are in the very distance. That just didn't seem to be possible.
So they reached out to a group of researchers at Princeton University led by astrophysicist Robert Dickey, who had been scouring the sky unsuccessfully for evidence of the Big Bang. Arno called and...
Dickey picked up the phone, and they started hearing things like atmospheric radiation, sky brightness, all the things that they were working on. Dickey put the phone down and said, "Boys, we've been scooped."
Robert and Arno had measured what Dickey and his team were searching for, the elusive cosmic microwave background radiation.
He thought about a Big Bang source of the universe, realized that it would be very hot and therefore full of radiation. And as the universe expanded, that radiation would simply cool. And whereas it was extremely hot to start with, by now it would simply be microwaves. Now it's so cold that it would just be radio waves.
And this, not pigeons or the noisy city, was exactly what had been causing headaches for Robert Wilson and Arno Penzias. The two groups of researchers from Bell Labs and Princeton each wrote complementary research papers with their findings.
They wrote one about the theory, we wrote one about our measurement, and we published them. I think unlike many changes that occur in science, there really was a paradigm shift with very little pushback.
It was huge. There was now evidence of a new theory for the beginning of the entire universe. Over a decade later, Robert Wilson and Arno Penzias were awarded the 1978 Nobel Prize in Physics. How'd that feel, Robert?
Felt pretty strange to win the Nobel Prize. I didn't feel comfortable being on the same list with Einstein.
But despite Robert's humility, there's no doubt of the significance of the discovery.
It gives us our earliest picture of the universe from which we can extrapolate back to very early times. It's one of the centerpieces of cosmology.
Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that the American flag has endured in its many forms as the ultimate symbol of freedom, justice, and the American way. But did you know that our nation's flag was designed by a high school student from Ohio?
According to legend, the original American flag from 1776 was sewn by a lady named Betsy Ross. It had 13 stars in a circle representing America's original 13 states. As more states joined the Union, people kept adding more stars to the flag. So by 1958, the US flag had a total of 48 stars for the 48 states of that time. Which brings us to our high school student, Robert Heft. Robert's history teacher gave his students an open-ended assignment.
Make a project illustrating your interest in American history. It could be anything.
So Robert, who was jazzed about hearing that Alaska and Hawaii were going to become states, cut up an old 48-state flag in his grandparents' basement and designed his own vision for a 50-state flag. When he turned in his final assignment, Robert's teacher said,
"Anyone can make a flag, and it's got the wrong number of stars."
The grade came back a B-. Robert tried to explain his idea to his teacher, who replied,
"I'll change your grade when your flag is accepted by the U.S. Congress."
Game on. Robert wrote 21 letters and called the White House 18 times until one day in 1960, Robert's phone rang.
Hello? Hello, Robert Heft?
It was President Eisenhower with news that Robert's 50-state flag design had actually been chosen as the new official flag of the United States. The president invited Robert to Washington, where he saw his American flag fly for the first time on July 4th, 1960. Since then, Robert's 50-state flag has remained unmatched as the quintessential symbol of America. But I know what you're thinking. Whatever happened to that B-? Robert's teacher honored his promise and changed the grade to an A.
Let's all go to Gullah Gullah Island. Gullah Gullah! Gullah Gullah!
Remember Gullah Gullah Island? The 90s kids show on Nick Jr. featuring a fun family and a pollywog named Binga Binga? Well, it's a real place. Kind of.
I'm Natalie Days, and I played Miss Natalie on Gullah Gullah Island.
My name is Ron Days, and I served as a dad.
Show me how old you are, Shane.
5.
There is no real place named Gullah Gullah Island except on TV. It is based on the Gullah Geechee culture, which was passed on by enslaved West Africans who were brought to this country.
Gullah Geechee culture was born out of several African cultures and languages brought here by enslaved people. Everything from cuisines and traditional practices have been maintained through generations of settlement in coastal villages in Georgia and the Carolinas.
I am Gullah Geechee and proud of it. It's important to me to make sure that Gullah Geechee culture is preserved because it's a very important factor of American cultural heritage.
When Natalie and Ron got the opportunity to present their culture on TV, they jumped at the chance.
By the time we met the woman who became the executive producer, we had been traveling around the country doing stories and songs of Gullah culture. That's what we did. In the beginning, we didn't know that it was so significant. There had never been a show like that before. We wanted a show where our children could see themselves. We actually ended up with a show where everybody could see themselves in us.
Before we go, would you guys mind singing us out?
Man, we get asked a lot.
Come and let's play together in the bright sunny weather. Let's all go to
Gullah Gullah Island. Gullah Gullah Island. Gullah Gullah Island.
Fondue. It's this thing we do with cheese. We melt it, we dip it, we eat it. In the 70s, it became super popular, but that didn't just happen by chance. There was an ominous force behind it, a real-life cheese cartel. 100 years ago, cheese was a hot commodity in Switzerland. It was exported at high volumes and played a major role in the Swiss economy. But that all changed after World War I. European countries devastated by the war could no longer afford to buy expensive imported cheese, which was bad news for Switzerland. So the government stepped in and they formed the Cheese Union. Basically, it was a cartel, and it worked like this. The first thing they did was force every dairy farmer and cheesemonger to fix the price of cheese, eliminating competition, meaning everyone could stay in the game. The cheese cartel also told them exactly how much cheese to make and limited the varieties. So instead of making thousands of different kinds of cheese, they only made 7. And it worked! The cartel controlled the cheese supply for decades. By the 70s, they got greedy and wanted to expand their cheese racket globally, so they introduced the world to a dish already popular in the freezing cold Alps: fondue. By marketing cheese for fondue, the cartel was able to sell more. I mean, think about it. It takes a lot, and I mean a lot of cheese to fill a pot. But as with most cartels, things got shady. Money went missing, people went to jail, and by the 1990s, the Swiss Cheese Union was dismantled. So there you have it. The reason we know and love fondue is because of a shady government program that convinced the world to consume massive amounts of melted cheese. Peace, love, and rock and roll. It's the hippie creed, along with some flower power and some crunchy granola. And we call hippies crunchy granola because of, well, granola. The link between the people, the culture, and the granola, it started in 1969 at Woodstock. Or Organizers estimated that 200,000 fun-loving people would fill the small town of Bethlehem, New York for the 3-day historic festival. But the number of attending doubled, and the next thing they knew, there were over 400,000 people camping out, which led to shortages, food shortages, and, well, that left the munchies craving free-loving hippies a little hangry. This is where the savior, Hugh Romney, came in. Hugh and his commune, Hog Farm, were hired to help organizers run the festival. Upon seeing the food shortage, they stepped in to help. They rounded up a group of volunteers, hit the streets, and came back with, you guessed it, granola! Members of Hog Farm filled tons of cups, and Hugh took the stage and announced there would be
breakfast in bed for 400,000.
The hippies ate it up, and for many, it was their first introduction to the crunchy stuff. And so there you have it. The original bond between crunchy granola and hippies was formed by granola at the one and only Woodstock Music Festival.